Okay, so thank you so much, Vidya. Thank you everybody for being here. This is the second lecture of our edition, this year edition of our seminar in Communication, Sport, and Media. It's organized by me and the Universidade Tuiuti do Paraná here in Brazil. And I welcome Professor Vidya Subramanian. I guess it's kind of right, but I don't know.
Perfect. I hardly ever get such good pronunciation. It's perfect.
Thank you. And Vidya is interdisciplinary scholar whose research interests lie in the intersection of technology and societies. Her research is loosely framed by two large issues. The first is colonization of the everyday, so-called real world by the digital, and the second is how power permeates and is implicated in such technologies. Her work has straddled several academic fields such as science, technology, and society, sociology, media studies, and sports studies. And she is now at the Jindal Global Law School in India, right, Vidya? And she's the author of a very nice book. That's why I invited her to be here with us. That is called, I have this in one of my notes, Vidya, I'm sorry, on the speedification of cricket, right? From Oxford University, and she talks about her PhD thesis, and she will be talking, I guess, some of it, but also about her research right now. And it's a very, very interesting book with a lot of science technology stuff, but I guess I kind of learned a lot about cricket because I didn't know anything about it. It's not a very popular sport here in Brazil, but it's a very popular and a very big entertainment in India. And it's very interesting to see those other countries and how they manage this relation between sports and technology. And I guess it's a really nice reading. I recommend it for anyone interested, not only in sports, but also about this idea of mediatization, how media and technology impact society, how it changes stuff. So it's a very nice to have Vidya here, and I thank so much, Vidya, to be here. And now the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for such a generous introduction. And I'm so glad you got a chance to read my book, even though, I know that I'm addressing a very football audience, even if there are only 6 of you. I know that it's not a very, very cricket-friendly audience, but I'm going to take a little bit of time and explain it anyway. So maybe I share my screen. It's better than looking at my face. You look at a few nice pictures. All right. Can you see it okay? Can you hear me okay? Yeah, is this working? Okay, great. So I'm just going to quickly say that I'm going to talk about the idea of sport and entertainment. This is not a very new concept that sport and entertainment, become intertwined. I think sport has always been about entertainment in some way or another. And I realized that the idea of speaking to an audience that is football specific, but I want to also point out that I've learned recently that Brazil actually has a wonderful cricket team, both a men's team and a women's team, and they've apparently been doing very well. They lead in the ICC Americas Championships, which is the ICC is the governing body of cricket, the International Cricket Council. And the Americas tournament includes the US and Canada. And the US and Canada, of course, have their cricket teams mostly because they have a large South Asian expat community. A lot of South Asians, Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Sri Lankans live in those countries. So their cricket rests on them. But Brazil, I'm very surprised to learn, has done very well in cricket. So I'm hoping at the end of this presentation, if even one or two of you go and cheer a Brazilian cricket team, especially the women's team, I will consider this a successful presentation. So a little bit about the kind of work that I do now. So my book, which I will show you in a minute, is about cricket, which is my PhD work. But I mostly work on, I'm coming back to cricket now in a strange sort of circular way. But I've done a bunch of other work. I've written a paper on tennis. I have worked on, because I was also a journalist, I've written a paper on how the newsroom gets transformed by technology. So what happens to digital media when it moves from legacy print media to digital media? I've written about the internet and what justice seeking is like on the internet. So social movements in India, etc. That's a bit about the kind of work that I do. My book, which you just heard about, is called Speeding Up Sport. It essentially deals with how the Indian Premier League came to be. I've written a chapter in a book on sports studies in India as well, in which I talk about the idea of the spectator. What happens to the people who are watching the game is almost as drastic, as big as the change in how the game of sport, the sport itself on the field has changed. So these are some of the things that I have that I hope to discuss in this talk. At any point, if you feel like you can't understand what I'm saying, or it's getting a little, I tend to talk too fast, just please point it out to me and let me know that this is ununderstandable, and I will try and slow down. Okay, so I do feel like an introduction to the sport of cricket is important here. So I'll talk a little bit about the history of the sport of cricket itself. I'm assuming most of you know that cricket comes to India via colonialism. It's a British sport played by the aristocracy in Britain, which is essentially the ruling classes. And it was considered a sort of idle pastime. One of the theorists of cricket calls it a ritualized garden party. It's essentially, as I like to tell a lot of my friends, the reason I never played football is because it's, you're too close to people. Everyone's all around you. You can get hit. Cricket is very difficult to get hit unless you get hit by the ball or the bat. So the game begins in England. It is played, as you can see, the golden age of cricket. It says 1890 to 1914 in this book. There have been various other golden ages since then. But it was essentially played like this. It was, a bunch of old men, mostly, and young men as well. But they played in schools. They played over a large field. There is a wicket. There's a batsman. And there is a bowler. So the essential game is the bowler throws the ball at the batter. And it's a little bit like baseball, both of who have the same colonial origins in Britain. The picture on top that you see, I don't know if you can see this black person who's batting, is Viv Richards of the West Indies team. He's one of the most fantastic test cricketers that we've ever had. One of the greats of the game of all time. And test cricket as a sport is unique in the world of sports because one match takes 5 days to finish. Even now, the sport is played exactly like that. You play for 5 days. One team bats first, then the next team tries to get them out, then the next team bats, and then the same thing is repeated again. And this goes on for 5 days. Until the 60s, sometimes the game took 6 days to finish with a rest day in the middle. It's a very slow game. You have tea breaks and lunch breaks, much like the British would like it. So you drink tea and you eat your crumpets, and then you go play for a while, and then you take a lunch break. It was a very, very slow-paced game. But it looks slow because it takes so long. But the actual action itself is actually quite quick. The person throws the ball, a person hits the bat. It happens, in the blink of an eye. And if you look at the image on the cover of this book, you'll see that the audience is actually very far removed from the pitch on which the game is being played. So it's very difficult for a spectator to really understand what is happening when in the stadium itself. So this was test match cricket. It was, as I like to call it, completely unmediated by technology. The umpire's word was final. There were no cameras, anything, until one day cricket comes to be. And I'll tell you a little bit in a minute about what that is. But Test cricket was also played in full white, in flannels, and you wear trousers, full trousers, and you wear pads under them and things like that. And if you see this gentleman here who's taking guard, he's W.G. Grace, one of the oldest greats of cricket, and he was a practicing doctor. So this was as an amateur sport. This is a practicing doctor who comes and plays cricket in his free time, and he's one of the acknowledged greats of the game. So that's how slow, and that's how at a very sedate pace the game used to be played. Of course, this changes by the time you get to the 60s and the 70s, and the important shifts that occur through, say, from the 30s to the 70s. I think someone's got their volume on. Anyway, so by the time you come from the 30s, 40s into the 70s, the popularity of the game is increasing in the Indian subcontinent. So India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka are becoming bigger powers, and slowly the power center has shifted to the fact, so much so that now the ICC, the International Cricket Council, is headquartered in Dubai and not in England, in London anymore. That's how much the game has moved east. In the 60s, what was happening was, and this writer writes it really well, that two major technological inventions are taking over life. One is the motor car, and the second is the television set. And because of this, in England, people stopped going to the stadiums to watch the game of cricket. Test match cricket, which is really long, and technology sort of made life faster, is the theory, that they stopped going. So gate kind of drops off in the middle of the 60s, and the 70s. No more gate money. So it falls drastically in England, but this doesn't happen around the world. In the rest of the world, people are still watching cricket, and it works and it's making money, and people are interested in it. And at that time, because the gate money was falling, administrators in England decide that they want to do something to make the game a little faster. And this is the first time that speed is injected into the game of cricket. So they try to organize a game which finishes in one day, and that's the name one-day cricket. So in cricket, the bowler bowls 6 balls. It is known as an over, and you play something like 100 overs in a day. And for the one-day game, they were each playing 50 overs aside, and the game would end within the day. So you would have drinks breaks in the middle. You would have one big lunch break, and then the second innings. And so the game would finish in the space of a day. Now, this limited overs game was called one day, and you'll see some of the pictures that I've put up are of some of the great moments. The bottom right picture is of the Indian captain winning the World Cup in 1983. This is still one of the greatest moments in Indian cricket. We look to Kapil Dev, who's the captain, taking that trophy with great pride. We think of him, he's a national hero, will continue to be forever, because he was the first person to win the World Cup for India. On the bottom left of the screen is one of South Africa's greatest fields people. He was a great fielder. His name is Jonty Rhodes. And with the advent of one-day cricket, this kind of athleticism really increases. So the players are no longer, you have to run. There's a lot of pace to the game, because there is a limited understanding of when the game has to finish. So the pace of the game radically increases. If you look at the picture on the top right, that's a sort of comparison of different bowlers from test times to one-day times. And Shoaib Akhtar, who is a fast bowler from Pakistan, broke all records by bowling at above 100 miles per hour. So that was insane. Imagine a ball coming at you. This is a small, hard ball. It's not like the football at all, and it's coming at you at 100 miles per hour, and you have to hit it with a bat over the stadium. That's essentially how speed becomes injected. And this is a very interesting way of analyzing the speed, because the bowler's pace sort of goes directly in consonance with the speed of the game itself. But one-day cricket was not the end of the evolution of cricket. We discovered something called 2020 cricket, which reduces the game even further. So it went from 5 days to 1 day, and now it goes to about 3 hours, which is essentially the amount of time you would give for a movie. In India, we have two obsessions. One is cricket, the other is cinema. I don't know if you know this, but India produces the largest number of movies in a year anywhere in the world. We have cinema in Hindi, we have cinema in all the languages of India, and cricket and cinema are our two obsessions, essentially. A movie, a traditional Indian movie, lasts about 3 hours, and now this game of 20 overs also became about that much time. So about 3.5 hours is how long this game lasts. It was essentially created because of the same reason that one day was created. In 2005, viewership was falling. The game had become stagnant. People thought the game had become stagnant. And as one commentator, Harsha Bhogle, put it, children were looking at cricket as a sort of father's game, my dad's game. And this is also the time in India when we are getting a lot of football. We get a lot of the English Premier League. We're watching 2002 when Brazil wins the World Cup. It was one of the highest viewerships was in India. This was the first time that I ever watched a football match live. And I remember staying up all night to watch the match and my father being very surprised. And he said, "What, you want to watch a game called football? I mean, what do you even know about what is going on?" He was very surprised. But it was our obsession. Everyone, all the cool kids were watching football, so we all watched the game. And you should know that Brazil has a very large fan following in India. We've been waving your flag around all World Cup for some reason. There's Argentina and there's Brazil, and those are our two teams. Coming back to cricket, we're now playing 20 over cricket. And so this begins in the early 2000s. The first T20 match, which is the picture you see on the top left here, was played between Australia and New Zealand at Auckland in 2005. And this is the ICC World Cup, which India won I think this is in 2007. Yeah, in South Africa in 2007, India wins the World Cup, and T20 internationals become sort of established as the third format in which cricket is played. And even today, we continue to play cricket in all three formats. So there are test matches, there are one days, and then there is the T20 game. Of course, I should now tell you the story of what happened in 2007. 2007, we have the biggest World Cup, which, by the way, we've just finished. The 2023 edition of the World Cup just finished 3 days ago. Australia won for the 6th time. But in 2007, in the World Cup, India and Pakistan both crashed out before the semi-finals. And because of this reason, this World Cup was held in the West Indies. And because of this reason, nobody made any money, because all the viewership of the game was in the subcontinent. Indians and Pakistanis and Bangladeshis and Sri Lankans, of course, are the largest audience for cricket. And because these two teams crashed out, that World Cup didn't make any money, because the West Indies board lost money, the advertisers lost money, broadcasters lost money, and all of these people could not make money because the eyeballs come from these two countries in South Asia and not from sort of England and Australia. And while there are big countries and big names in the game, the audience has shifted entirely to India. And it was then that the idea of the Indian... All right. It was at that time that the Indian Premier League, the idea of the Indian Premier League was thought up. A man called Lalit Modi comes up with the idea of a game, and to put it mildly, in which India would never lose. This was a Premier League set inside India on the lines of the English Premier League. And essentially, it was a game between cities in India, and it was played very much like a football league, where you could buy players. The picture on the top left is one of an auction that was continued, and players were Players were sold to teams. So we had never heard of anything like this. Your entire fandom consisted of people supporting countries, nationalist. It was a deeply nationalist sport. And suddenly you had foreign players, you had Australians and British players and even Pakistanis for a little while who were allowed to play for cities in India. There were large businessmen. On the bottom right of your screen in the center is a man called Vijay Mallya, who ran a large liquor empire from South India and is currently a wanted man for embezzling a lot of money and has not paid his money and has escaped the country. He was the owner of one of the very successful franchises. There were after parties, there were cheerleaders, there were movie stars. In the center, if you see a photograph of a man in a black t-shirt, that is Shah Rukh Khan, India's biggest superstar, film star. And he has a following all over the world. He's a very famous guy. I mean, literally, because of the population of the country, no one has a following as large as Shah Rukh Khan. Shah Rukh Khan owns one of the IPL teams, the Kolkata Knight Riders. And this was the game that they were building. This was not the sedate 5-day white-wearing game that we had known for so long. This became a spectacle. The Hindi word for this is tamasha. Tamasha is essentially a performance, a sort of street play. It's theatrical. It's over the top. It's shiny. It's glitzy. It's glamorous, and that's what the Indian Premier League was. My argument in my thesis was that this Indian Premier League could not have been built without the substrate of television and digital technologies. And digital technologies that essentially mimic the broadcast in the way that television does. One of my favorite quotations from one of my favorite books is, in fact, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, in which a machine produces a drink which he says is almost but not quite entirely unlike tea. This is a description that I use to describe the IPL because it's not entirely about cricket. We have politicians. The current person who runs the BCCI, which is the Board of Control for Cricket in India, is the son of our Home Minister. And is he a great cricketer? You might ask. No, he's not. Is he a great administrator? You might ask. No, he is not. But he is the head of cricket in India, which is the most lucrative sport in almost one of the most lucrative sports in the world. The IPL is the second richest league in the world, second, I think, to the NFL. I'm not sure if the EPL has more money than the IPL, but I'm not sure if that's true in 2023. But in 2018, I think the IPL was third behind the English Premier League and the National Football League in America in terms of how much money they move. We've had fantastic scandals. There were two players who got into a fight, which is unknown in cricket because as you realize, it comes from an aristocratic tradition from Britain, and so it's called the gentleman's game. And here were two players who were slapping each other after the game was over. So this was a massive scandal. We've had superstars fall foul of security people. We've had people's girlfriends, and India is a very deeply conservative country. And the idea of the wives and girlfriends and the glamour and the glitz of the cheerleaders, the fact that they're dressed in this skimpy fashion, they're highly sexualized. All of this makes for a fantastic television spectacle. This is the idea of bringing it to TV. But it was not just TV. It was also a social media revolution. It was in many ways, it was built for those, as they say, with short attention spans. It was built for people who didn't have the time to engage with a game that was as long and slow as cricket. Right. I will now talk a little bit about the technologies that have come into cricket. So on the right are these three things called Hawkeye, Snicko, and Hotspot. Hawkeye, I'm sure we all know from tennis. Hawkeye essentially is a sort of mapping technology. In cricket, however, it does one other thing. It does a prediction game. In cricket, there is an out known as LBW, leg before wicket. So what happens is if the batsman's leg hits the ball and not the bat, then that's considered out if the ball would have hit the stumps. So you're supposed to guard the stumps, which are the 3 wickets that you see, the 3 sort of what they call the, the 3 pieces of wood is the wicket, also known as the stumps. If the ball would have hit it, it would have been out. And therefore, the player is given out because he did not stop the ball with his bat. Now, this is essentially technology indulging in conjecture, because there is, in tennis, where the ball lands is the question. And because the ball has landed, so you know for a fact that it has landed. In cricket, the LBW wicket is not, the ball didn't hit the stumps. That's the point. The player stops the ball with his foot or the pad that he's wearing on his leg. So, and usually it's a him. So I'm going to keep saying he. The women's cricket is very slow. So I'm going to continue to say he. So what happens with Hawkeye here is Hawkeye calculates the trajectory of the ball until it lands and then indulges in conjecture. And there is a fantastic paper called You Cannot Be Serious, Public Understanding of Science. You Cannot Be Serious, of course, is a line from Roger Federer's famous falling foul of Hawkeye in the Wimbledon final, where he's playing Rafa Nadal and he thinks the ball should have been called out, but it is called in. And this is his sort of great argument with Hawkeye, right? And in this case, Hawkeye goes one step further. It is indulging in conjecture. The snickometer is another interesting innovation in technology. It calculates whether or not the ball hit the bat at what time. So it uses an oscilloscope to calculate at which point did the ball hit the bat. Hotspot is a way of mapping heat. Wherever the ball hits something, because of the friction, some heat is generated, and this sort of heat map creates the idea of a hot spot to see where exactly the ball hit. All of these 3 technologies are now used routinely in cricket in gameplay. The interesting thing is that none of these were tested in field conditions before being adopted into cricket. They all come from TV. Hawkeye was included as part of Sky TV in England, their package of cricket. It was supposed to make cricket more entertaining. So they introduced Hawkeye. They introduced Nico only for the commentators to see and not exactly use on the field. But because these were innovations that seemed useful, cricket invented an umpire that was not on the field, or what is known as the third umpire. There are 2 on-field umpires and a third television umpire. This television umpire can ask for Hawkeye, for Snicko, and for different camera angles to make decisions that are referred to him that on-field umpires are not able to take. And this umpire is actually known as the TV umpire. Of course, he's known as the third umpire, but normally people refer to him as the TV umpire. There are lots of other innovations that the IPL has brought in. The spider camera is one of those things that literally comes all the way down and into players' faces. We've had things like players giving interviews while on field. They're playing and the commentators are asking them questions through an earpiece. So they're answering questions, they have cameras. They can see themselves on a large screen. And this is true for most games. If you're in a stadium, what you're looking at is not so much the game on the field, but in fact at a large screen that then shows you the game that is going on. The LED lights on the stumps are another innovation. Every time the bails jump off, they light up. So there's a whole, it lights up so you know that the bails were broken. These are some of the technologies that you see in the cricket field. Cricket training, and because of the advent of television, especially the television and recording technologies, cricket that was not a very highly coached game became something in which the coach becomes very important. Unlike football, where the coach is literally the be all and end all of the team, the center of the team's play. In cricket, the coach was not very important, even as recently as the 70s and the 80s. But if you see on the top left of your screen, there is a computer attached to a bunch of terminals and a camera. And what happens with this is that every action of the bowler, of the batsman, is recorded and played back and tweaked and trained. And that's how players work. The bottom left of the screen is a drone camera that is operated by by people sitting inside the stadium. And now this is true for football stadiums as well, and tennis stadiums. Beneath that green is what so somebody I interviewed worked in television, and they told me that every stadium has kilometers and kilometers of cabling underneath the surface. And behind these screens that show ads are literally thousands and thousands of miles of cables, because without that you will not be able to plug in to broadcast. So the meaning of the sport completely shifts from that of a spectator watching the game to building a game for television. And IPL and one-day cricket were essentially slowly built towards first the television and then the digital screen, your second screen and your third screen, your laptop screens and mobile phone screens. If you look at the top right, you'll see the number of cameras that are being used within one single game. There are, at last count, I think 45 cameras for every game to be able to see it from every angle. And angles are really important in cricket because there are only two batsmen, and how they access the crease makes a huge difference. And the person at the bottom right is the television umpire. This person sits there with sort of these 5 screens, and now you can actually hear him talk to the director of the match and tell them that, I would like to see an angle. Do you have another angle? Can I see this particular thing to make my decision? And these are conversations that the umpire is having with the television director. And if the director chooses, he cannot show him an angle that might work. So it gives a lot more power to the person who's directing how the televised version of the sport looks, as opposed to what the umpires should have access to. One of the theorists I use in my book and in my thesis to talk about this is Paul Virilio, who is this who talks about the idea of speed, using dromos and dromology. Dromos, which is the Greek word for speed. One of my favorite quotations from him is, "Those absent from the stadium are always right." And what he means by this is that the sport is now built for a television audience. He calls it the city of the instant. In this city of the instant, everyone, all of us who watch something on a screen, be it the television screen, be it the computer screen, be it our cell phones, are all part of the viewing public. But the people in the stadium are not those for who this game is now built. Those in the stadium are part of the spectacle, because otherwise it's not fun to watch. Remember when COVID was going on and football first began, it was so eerie to watch a match with no stadium audience. So much so that they had to inject false, like fake audience sounds to make football broadcast better right after COVID, because no one was allowed inside stadiums. The audience becomes co-opted in the visual, in the spectacle of the game itself, for those watching on TV. And this is one of the big things that cricket really learned to embrace, because as they found out, and as I write in my book, cricket plus television equal to money was the simple equation that they found. And because cricket is slow, and between overs there is a changeover, one over is bowled from one end and the other is bowled from the other end, what you see in that space on TV or anywhere on broadcast is ads. So there are ads in the middle of the game, there are ads in the breaks, there are ads running as a ticker on the screen, there are ads on the side. The entire edifice of cricket has been co-opted into this sort of televised advertising space. So the spectators then become consumers, not just of the game itself, but of all the products that are being sold through the game. And this really brought in crazy amounts of money into the game. One of the things that I find really interesting is that because it is a televised game, the the body of the player becomes the canvas on which ads are displayed. This is an official picture from a ICC document on where ads are allowed to be displayed on the person of the player. So if you look at it, there are 2 ads on the trousers. There are about 5 ads on the shirt. 6 actually, if you count the front logo. There are 3 on the helmet or the cap. So there are different rules for the cap, there are different rules for the helmet, there are different rules even for socks and for non-players' shirts. What is interesting is that the country logo and the team logo are the smallest in size, and each of these is up for grabs. All of these are sponsored, what are known as properties, and this was the thing that really fascinated me. When you speak to someone in the IPL, they will refer to each ad as a property. So the batsman's leading arm is a property. Their front foot is a property. So all of these are basically places on which you can place advertisements, and which is why I call the player the canvas, because the large thing that you're selling continues to be advertising, whether it's for digital or for television. And the visual is the only way to engage with cricket. Of course, there was cricket before TV and there was cricket before radio. And when radio came into cricket, it was only Gideon Hay, an Australian writer of cricket, actually writes very well about how media was an honored guest at the games. If you came to a sport, be it football, be it tennis, be it anything, you came as an honored guest that was covering the match. The match was news, and you sort of gave people knowledge of what happens. But what has shifted now is that the media is the reason for all of this. The media owns the stadium. The cabling that I was talking about, the infrastructure of the stadium is all built for media. So the spectacle of the game itself is for television. It is not a sport that can happen without the mediation of TV at all anymore. I love this image of Shoaib Akhtar, primarily because it really depicts the speed that Virilio is talking about. And this is going to be my last slide. I'm going to just leave this here while I talk a little bit about the idea of the injection of speed. Speed is not just in taking a 5-day slow game and making it into a 3-hour sort of television spectacle. Speed is also in the way that the sport is played with, in the quickness of the way that the image on your screen changes. Speed is also in the way that you remember a match. And I love the concept of memory within a match, because because there is so much cricket and it is so lucrative for ads, you see it all the time, everywhere. Somebody or the other is constantly playing. And by doing this, you reduce the amount of memory that you have for the game. So there is the notion that a good match will stay in your mind doesn't happen anymore. Whatever it is, it takes, you forget it in an instant, and the next game is on, and the next game is on, and the next game is on. And so it doesn't reflect in memory as much as it would if you had the time to slowly build the image in your head. I've written about how a test match would be written about in newspapers. So the image had to be built in every viewer's mind. You didn't see the guy play, but you saw maybe a photograph in the newspaper, or you heard the radio commentary. You knew broadly who had won and who had lost, but the written word sort of built the image for you in your head. But when you have TV, you don't have to do that. The visual is in front of you, so no one has to explain what happened. But what that does is it takes away the ability to really engage with every day of the game itself. So what Brett Hutchins calls this televised media sport. This is sport that is particularly played for media and particularly played for television. And television has managed to bring us these visuals so close that it becomes entertainment in a way that sport didn't used to be. Sport was still something about about uncertainty, about who will win, it's a reality show, really, but it's also about intense passion, about the way that you engage with the sport was a thing that mattered. But now it's become more of a spectacle for ads than anything else, is the cynic's conclusion when you think about cricket in the modern age. The other thing I want to talk about is the idea of what it does to the spectator who is watching. And I deal with this tension in different ways. I talk about the spectator consumer, who is an entity that is entirely different from the spectator of old. So the fans of cricket used to be fans of a country, but when the IPL comes to be, and the IPL does not represent, India is a very large country and many states, and the IPL does not have teams from all the states. So when you now support a team, you don't support it because, you know, I'm from Delhi, so I support the Delhi Capitals, or I'm from Kolkata, so I support the Kolkata Knight Riders. In my field work, I found that most people said, I like Kolkata Knight Riders, although they had nothing to do with Kolkata. So I asked them, why do you like this team? And they said, oh, because I love Shah Rukh Khan. I love his movies, so I like the team he owns. This was true for other players. I love Mahendra Singh Dhoni, who's one of the most successful captains that the Indian team has ever had. So because they love Dhoni, they love the team he plays for, which is the Chennai Super Kings. This is and because of the IPL, because the IPL has been so successful and makes so much money, other countries have emulated this. So Australia has the Big Bash League, Pakistan has the Pakistan Premier League. Many countries, England has its own domestic T20 tournament. And all of these domestic tournaments are open to international players to come and play. But the biggest and baddest of them all is the Indian Premier League. It's the sort of OG, Premier League of cricket. But what this does is, what it has managed to do is, it has managed to move the power center of cricket so far east. Because all the money comes from India, because all the money, all the advertising comes from, advertising revenue comes from India and Pakistan, the Indian Cricket Board becomes the bully of world cricket. If you look at what happened this World Cup, it was a very bad World Cup. It was hosted by India, and it was done in a way to showcase just India. All they wanted to do was cheer for the Indian team. And there were only 11 teams that played, and they all played each other. There were no leagues. There were no. If you don't let this, they say that if there is more money in the game, more countries will play. But this has turned out to be false, because in the 90s we saw far more participation from smaller countries that didn't play on a higher level. We saw Kenya, we saw Canada, we saw Ireland. All of these smaller countries would bring their teams and play in the World Cup, and it was a chance for everyone to show off. But this time the small team that did really well was Afghanistan, which is fantastic, of course. But what this does is, it essentially reduces the game, because the money is going to the top 3 players, which is India, Australia, England. The money is not trickling down to the rest of the league. And I read an article recently where they say, even though while FIFA may be one of those big bad teams, and the boss of FIFA thinks of himself as the boss of cricket, Indian cricket's boss is really the true boss of the game, because he literally owns the shop. There was no need to organize a better tournament, because they were so confident that the money would come in. And because India played the final, and because India played all the way through the tournament to the final, nobody lost money. The advertisers made a packet, the stadiums made a packet, so they didn't need the rest of the world. Of course, one must then ask the question, what is the future of cricket? What happens to this wonderful game that was so different from everything else that has ever played a sport? It was slow, and the only reason that part of the game survives is because of the players. And many people have told me this, that because Test cricket is not lucrative. You play it over 5 days. It requires, it's an endurance sport. It's like a marathon almost. You have to grit down and play for 5 days. And this part of the sport now only exists because the players think of that great players are only those who can play Test cricket. So it survives because of the players and not because of the viewers, which I think is a very sad commentary on the state of the game today. I think I've spoken for about 40 minutes. Let me stop here. We also started late, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. This is basically, the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
Yeah, thank you, Vidya. It's very interesting. And just let me. Okay. Yeah, it's very interesting. And really, I didn't know a lot about cricket. I know those games that last for several days, couple of days. But now it's very interesting. I didn't know how important the Indian Premier League is for the sport. So it's very interesting to see. And the feeling I get is that listening to your account of what's happened to cricket, I guess it's kind of what happened to football about half a century ago, but then we weren't much aware of how the impact of technology was in sport, because maybe even the television was kind of new then. I believe that kind of football and the Olympics and those big mainly the major events like World Cup and the Olympics were kind of like intertwined with the rising of television post World War II. So we didn't know how much it was going to change the sport, but we now know that, of course, there's a lot of change, and we see those changes. But with the cricket right now, we kind of are looking to it happening in front of us. So I guess it's very interesting. I remember that also volleyball, which is also popular sport here in Brazil, has changed a lot since I was a kid. And because of TV, like volleyball, it's kind of it's a match, I don't know, was kind of 3-4 hours, and now it's an hour and a half. And it's because of television, of course. And we know it, they say it's because of it. So yeah. There's a lot of, it's very interesting to see how this happens right now. So I don't know, has anyone have any question for Vidya? You can also write for me in the chat. I know it's happening right now, and I can translate to her. But I don't know. I like how you use Paul Virino and how this idea of the speedification that he used, you also kind of talk about it. But I was thinking, reading your book on something that maybe, I don't know, I guess it's a kind of insight I had some time ago and then never had the time to work with it. That's the idea of maybe a televisuality of the sport, like maybe some sports need to have this potential actualization in kind of in the language of the television for them to be absorbed by television. For example, the most popular sport here in Brazil, played here in Brazilian schools, is not football, but it's handball. Handball is the most popular in the schools. I see. But there is no much of handball on television, not here in Brazil, but worldwide, and it's not a very popular sport. And one of the reasons a producer once told me, I work with producing sports, even sports in television, and I know about the cables and so broadcast. I work on broadcast. So also I was talking with this guy that was a big producer here in Brazil, and he explained to me that the problem with handball is that the ball is too fast for the camera. So the play is only visible in the replay, because you shoot too fast. So it wasn't a televisable sport, maybe. So there is not this kind of televisuality. So you can change and create all this show and entertainment around the sport, because the mechanics of the sport kind of don't let this happen. So I don't know. It seems to me a lot that it's this televisibility, I don't know, of television that brings TV into sports, and he makes sports into television. And maybe this is what television see in cricket, how we can get cricket and how we can create it in our vision, in the television way. But in some way, cricket must have some kind of mechanics on the sports so we can transform it into television entertainment. I don't know if this makes sense for you. I don't.
Yes, absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. In fact, I speak about this in one of my papers. The idea that cricket was so amenable to television, right?
Yeah.
In a way, even football is not, because as my friends, so I was interviewing a bunch of people. We were doing a sort of focus group, and they kept saying it's irritating to watch cricket on TV because when you watch football, you don't have any ad breaks for 45 minutes. And then you have 10 minutes of just, whatever ads and everyone breaks. And then you come back and you play for 40 minutes and there is no, there are no ad breaks. But in cricket, every 15 minutes, there's an ad break. Every 10 minutes, there's an ad break. So cricket is very, very good for TV. Although you can do real close-ups, you can see the face of the cricketer. And it's which is why the spider cam is so useful to the game. It makes for fantastic visuals, the green, the large games, and then these sort of, and now they've put in a lot of extra stuff, the colored clothing, the crazy, the shiny, all of that. And the idea that this televisuality that you're talking about has literally actually fallen off the screen, because now we're all carrying around our own phones as cameras and stuff like that. So one of the things that the IPL sells is the idea of the celebrity, and that if they're walking through the tunnel that they come out of, you can stand there and take a selfie with your favorite cricketer. So you're part of that visuality of the game itself. So you're absolutely right about that. I completely agree with you on the fact that I did not know that first that handball was the popular sport in Brazil, and second of all that it is too fast for TV. I suppose that makes sense. I'm going to use that sometime. I must read up a little more about it, but I think you're onto something there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Because in our schools, PA, physical education, always involves some sport, and usually it's handball. It's not so much of football. I don't know how it is right now, actually, because I know that this was very popular when I was in the school 20, 30 years ago, but I believe it's kind of the most popular, but I don't know. So Marcelo is asking you, I've tried to translate, do you believe that the media has the power to popularize sports, even if they aren't as widely practiced in the country, such as women's football here in Brazil, maybe even cricket in Brazil?
So if I'm understanding that right, let me just, so you're asking, does media have the power to popularize the sport?
The sport, yeah, exactly.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. That's the point of media. Yes. But here's the problem with doing that. It only does it to sports that they think are profitable. So the media creates the spectacle, and then the media also mediatizes the spectacle. So when the media creates the spectacle, they create something that they feel they can sell. And especially with stuff like women's football, and this is a great statistic, right, that proves it. The winning team in the Women's Football World Cup, which was the USA, made less money than the first men's team to get eliminated in the Men's World Cup. So how do you calculate why women deserve lesser money than men? The answer that everybody will give you is that men's football makes more money because more people will show ads. This is something that they've said for tennis as well, right? That someone like, in fact, Novak Djokovic made the comment that, men's tennis is so much more entertaining than women's tennis, without realizing that more people showed up for the Serena Williams, Venus Williams match than they did for the Novak Djokovic match in Wimbledon. The reason women play 3 sets as opposed to men's 5 sets is because the organizers think that men's games are more popular, so they should give them more field time. So while the media does play a large role in popularizing sport, and this is one of the reasons why T20 was envisioned, because they thought if you played a smaller game, more countries would get involved. And they did. It's true. Absolutely. It's far easier to play T20 than it is to play a test match. But the media also then changes the rules of who gets to make money. And this has nothing to do with the quality of the game. If you've seen that wonderful ad recently where they, before the Women's World Cup, I think it was, that they made it look like it was all men playing these fantastic silk passes, and then eventually they told us it was not, it was actually women who did all this amazing stuff. It has nothing to do with quality. It has everything to do with how media sells the sport. And when media becomes the owner of the sport, so to speak, that changes the way that that fans or enthusiasts can engage with it.
Yeah.
I don't know that answer.
Yeah, Marcelo, if you want to complement something. But also I was thinking about Marcelo because here in Brazil, American football is kind of popular right now, and it wasn't 10 or 15 years ago. And I know it is because of ESPN, Disney Sports Network. So it's a very popular sport here in Brazil because of television, and each year is always a bigger audience and etc. And
this is true for the NBA as well, right? The NBA basketball became really big around the world, even though nobody was really playing basketball, because it was on your TV. If you're constantly bombarding someone, but why won't they do it with women's sports? This is a question that anyone can answer, I guess.
And even with kind of this idea of soft power, I know there's a lot of English Premier League. This is the idea. We can sell for all the world, and everybody will be talking about England and United Kingdom and everything. And we can sell it. It's very I'm kind of out of focus. We can sell it very cheap because it's kind of not what the sports is kind of used like to gain influence in other markets around the world, and kind of this idea. How
the idea of celebrity. You're absolutely right that they use as soft power, and the EPL even more than anyone else, right? We know that fans from around the world will suddenly show up and be like, "Oh, I love Manchester United," and why Manchester United? It makes no sense for someone in India living in Mumbai or, I don't know, Sao Paulo to be a Manchester United fan. Because, I mean, will you be able to point to Manchester on a map? I know that most of my friends, when they first started watching football, Manchester was the biggest team and Manchester United became a thing. But you're right, in terms of what it means for countries to have soft power, what it means for you, what do you identify with? But the more it gets linked with money, the less it is about soft power, and the more it is about political power, which we know English Premier League and those who own the games, the teams, who it is that owns the team and who had to give up their team more recently. I mean, where is the money? In the Middle East,
Russia, that's a great point. Yeah, right. Yeah. One question I guess I understand it right, but I want to ask you. So, about cricket, right? So there is this T20 league, this kind of play with shorter games, and then there is the test match that is the traditional one with the game that's kind of go on for a lot of days, right? And the IPL is in this kind of T20 format, right?
Yes.
And are the same players that play in both? There's another league for the test match, or not something like that?
That is a really, really good question. Most of the players are the same, but there are some who are considered T20 experts, or those who are considered. So the players themselves judge their own value or their own worth based on how well they play in Test cricket, because Test is an endurance sport. But there are many, many specialists of the T20 game as well, because it requires like a really short burst of energy, of play time. So most of the players can go through all three formats, but there are some who are considered specialists of a particular form as well. the IPL is the easiest, and a lot of in fact, I've spoken to many coaches who will say that they want that parents come with their wards and say, I want my son to play IPL. How can I get my son into an IPL team? They're no longer interested in learning the sport. They're interested in making sure that they get into the IPL. So they're trying to build more sort of T20 experts in that.
Yeah. So in your book, you also talk about the use of media and technology in the training with coaches and the training of the players. So there is also this difference between T20 teams and the test match teams and the coaching. Maybe, I don't know, listen to you. I believe that maybe IPL clubs use more of this kind of technology to coaching and media technology to coaching than the more traditional ones. So there is not a thing.
Certain about this. I'm not very sure if the IPL teams use more technology, but they certainly do use a lot of technology. In fact, when I was doing my MPhil, I had interviewed a person who worked in a training sort of videography company, and they said that they were even starting to do something like genetic testing for players. So the kind of technologies that they were using becomes really interesting. That they will they'll take your gene. If you're a young player starting out, they map your genetics, and then they say, oh, but you have an 80% chance of getting arthritis after the age of 30, so maybe you should be this kind of a bowler, maybe you should not pick this for your career. So they even do that kind of profiling. And then there are so until the advent of the videography and the coach was not really important, but now, in fact, one of my favorite stories is of this Indian spin bowler who went to Pakistan for a series in the 90s. And this is not that long ago. I mean, I'm a millennial. I think of the 90s as 10 years ago, but I realize it's quite a long time ago. But so he travels to Pakistan and he's a vegetarian. So he can't eat meat. And in Pakistan, everything has meat in it. So the poor guy could barely eat anything that they served him. So he lost about 10 kilos of weight, couldn't play anymore, and came back unable to, he had to spend some time recuperating, regaining his health, because there was no way to, make sure he had a diet. This would be unimaginable now. If you're an international player, your diet would be fixed. You would have a physio, a nutritionist. You'd have all of these people as part of the team that trains you. That's how much technology has shifted in coaching. There is another interesting story here, which is of remote coaching. The coach no longer has to be with the team. People have individual coaches as opposed to team coaches, and that guy lives somewhere else and just makes sure that he gets the videos and then coaches from a distance. I don't know how well it works, but I do know it happens.
Yeah, coaches distance is very, very, very strange to think about, but okay. So anyone has any more question? I have show time with Vidya, but I have one more. The last time we spoke, we are on this event in Netherlands about video assistant referee, right? And there's this lot of course, discussion about the referees and the technology, and we see it every day. We see this week with Brazil versus Argentina 2 nights ago, a lot of polemics about the use or not use of video assistant referee. And I know that cricket use also Hawkeye and other technologies. Collins and the events talk about a lot of cricket in their book about referee and technology, and you also present some here. But what I was going to ask you was, I guess I have this feeling that video assistant referee, of course, it's kind of I agree with you and Povidio about the idea that the people in their houses and the coaches, they now have they know what's happened, they feel better than the referees, maybe. But I guess that much of this new technology is about keeping the game for more time in the media. Like people kind of talk about what happened last night, 2 nights ago, and last week, a lot of time, much more than before video system referee. And I don't know that this is something in India too with cricket. How is this media environment around the game and how its technology changed the conversation about the game? I guess this is the question. How technology changed the conversation, and if there is this impact of a greater media aware of the sports because of it.
This is absolutely right. This is an excellent question. That because of the way that, because we have TV and we have this, then the conversation around the game has taken a longer, has a longer shelf life. This is absolutely true for cricket. In fact, there has been so much programming around cricket that some people will now say that there is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, there will be some form of cricket programming on sports channels constantly. So there will be packages of people who did well. So, who's 10 greatest sixes, 10 greatest shots, 7 greatest batsmen, 12 greatest bowlers, whatever packages there are, these are constantly built through this visual, through the image through the television image. You're absolutely right that the conversation has shifted in that what happened in the game yesterday will be, a half-an-hour show on TV on every news channel. This didn't used to happen before. This happens a lot more after the advent of 24-hour TV, 24-hour news channels in India, which is also coincides with the neoliberal turn. India opened up its economy in 1992, and then slowly, when television channels start becoming a big thing. So you're absolutely right. All of this combines and makes it a conversation that lasts a lot longer. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, this is interesting because technology doesn't change only the dynamics of the mechanics of the sport, but also everything that is around it, like coaching and media and so on. We think this is very interesting, I believe. So Fabio has another question for you, and he's asked you, I will try to translate, but nowadays, a player's popularity is measured by the number of followers on social media. Like Neymar has I don't know numbers but 260 million followers. LeBron James, a lot of. Who is or who are the Neymars of cricket, and what influence they have and the visibility do they have in their societies?
This is a very good question. Hi, Fabio. Thank you for your question. This is a very interesting question. You're absolutely right in at least assuming that the popularity of the sports person is much to do with the popularity on social media. I agree with you 100%. We have many of those. Cricket has many of a fantastic, Twitter following. We also have cricketers who get political, who say things about, who agree with the ruling party, or who will stand up for someone else, all of that. So Virat Kohli is one of the big ones in cricket in India who has a very large fan following. It helps that his wife is a film star and a celebrity in her own right. And he's one of the most fantastic batsmen currently in the world game. So there's Mahendra Singh Dhoni, MS Dhoni. He was one of India's most successful captains. He has he could absolutely mobilize millions of people to do things that he wanted them to. But I want to point out a very funny thing that happened. I don't know if this happens in Brazil, but in India, if the team plays badly and they don't like the way you play, this very popular person can actually fall from grace very quickly. And MS Dhoni has seen this firsthand. He was one of our most successful captains. And one time when he played badly, they pelted his house with stones. So they found his house in his small town where he lives, and they pelted his house with stones. So while social media enables a lot of fan following and a lot of positive love and greatness for them, it is very easy for trolls to target them, and their if they sort of fall foul of the large troll armies of political parties, etc., it's very easy for them to actually lose a lot of social capital through that, and sometimes it gets dangerous. I mean, we know that social media doxing is a real thing. So I think social media is a double-edged sword, especially in India at this moment, where politically all of these conversations are so charged. But you're right in saying that the popularity of a player is seen by the number of followers. It also helps to get their endorsement deals up. So depending on how many followers they have, they get better endorsement deals, I think, from corporates and brands. So it works that way as well. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice. Yeah, we had a famous episode here in Brazil this year that a player was caught in a motel with two prostitutes. And the people, the supporters of his team, Corinthians, found out where his location because of social media, because he posted something that the region, so they kind of figure out where he was going. So yeah, it was very famous one. So this happened too. It's kind of what happens with social media.
Yeah.
So any other question? I had one other one, but I kind of lost maybe. Yeah. What is about? Anyway, I was asking I was just thinking about the. Yeah, I'm sorry. I guess I will not remember, but reading about cricket and listening to you and seeing cricket, I saw some videos. I never saw a full match, unfortunately, but I was seeing some videos because of our talk on your book. And there is a sport here in Brazil, a popular sport here in Brazil we call taco. I don't know if everyone, I believe everybody think about it when they saw cricket. It's a kind of a kids game, and it's played a lot like cricket. But like just the inning, and so the people need to protect their base, and they kind of the movement is the very same of the cricket. And it's a very popular kids game here in Brazil. I used to play a lot when I was a child, and I believe everybody also played this. I don't know. I guess I kind of became curious to know. I'm gonna search this out if there is maybe this relation of this popular sport in Brazil and cricket. Probably there is some relation.
Perhaps. No, I've never heard of this game, but I'm about to. I will Google it as soon as we're done.
Yeah. So taco or Bactis. Yeah.
Okay. I'm writing it down. I will definitely be looking this up. And I don't know, maybe I do a next book on that, and that's how I get to travel to.
Yeah, it's a very strange to think about it, but of course, and this maybe it's kind of make me think about it, because of course we know that football is popular worldwide because of the British people, and they bring football for everybody, everywhere. And here in Brazil, maybe Argentina is more evident this influence of the British, because there's a lot of clubs with English name like Argentina Juniors, Boca Juniors, River Plate, of course, but of course Brazil too. But cricket is not a lot of popular out of ex-British colonies, and there's a reason for that. I don't know. I know that is kind of a sports historian question, but it's out of speciality, but I don't know if there is some discussion about it.
There is a discussion around how to make cricket more popular. In
Okay.
fact, there is an attempt to make it an Olympic sport. So I think that might help it get out of the Commonwealth, which is
Yes.
Commonwealth colonies, which are the ones that play it now. I actually don't understand why it's not more popular. To be honest, I think it's a fantastic game. I think I think everyone should play it. I really don't understand why more people don't love it.
Yeah. Maybe television may change it because
Well, we've been trying for a while. In fact,
Yeah.
I went to a baseball game when I was in the US. I spent a year in the US recently, and I really wanted to go watch a baseball game. And they kept saying, "Oh, but you like cricket, so you'll understand it." But to be honest, cricket is not boring compared to baseball.
Yeah.
I spent a whole innings watching a match where no one scored a run. I was like, hey, I will never hear anyone who says cricket is boring from not.
Yeah, we baseball is another of those games here in Brazil, at least, that is only played because of television, because this is not a popular one, and maybe cricket, because of taco, maybe some relation, it could be more popular here in Brazil, but baseball, sure not. I agree with it. It's a bit boring. Yeah, I don't know, Vidya, do you want to add something up, talk a little more about your work? I don't know, we have some time, but for me, I did all my questions I had to you.
Okay. No, nothing in particular. I think I was very excited to make a presentation about cricket, to a very football audience. I've done it once before. I presented at a science and technology conference on sport, and the entire audience was French-speaking people who only knew football. It was very sad. Nobody asked any questions. Nobody understood what I was talking about. But I feel like I've had a much better response here. People have actually asked me questions and have engaged with the subject. I know it's a strange sport, but I think the idea of media and the way that people engage with it maybe something that is similar, and that can have a conversation beyond just one sport or another. So I'm very grateful to you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I think this was a very fun thing to do. I hope you guys had fun. I hope you learned something, enjoyed listening to this or something.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much. I'm sorry because of all the technological problems here, but
please don't apologize. It's absolutely fine. It's always going to happen. Technology will always win over all of us.
Yeah. But I had a lot of fun. I love your book. It's a really good book, and I recommend it I recommend it for my people. I teach communication and technology, so I believe you are so much into it and into the idea of mediatization and sport and technology, how it changed society. It's a really good book, and I had a lot of fun. Nice presentation, and so nice this talk. So thank you so much, and now we can go to sleep because I know it's very late there.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
everyone.
Bye. Então, gente,